I've worked with a bunch of people that want to do a TEDx talk, and oftentimes, even though they're experienced, they have books and they have degrees and they have results with clients and things like that, they have speaking experience they've done, when they describe their credentials to me and they say, this is what I want to pitch a TEDx event with, there's lots of problems with their bio and how they describe it. So in this video, we're going to go over the major bio mistakes or kind of credibility mistakes that people make when they're describing their expertise that make them sound like less of an expert than they really are. So the first mistake and the first tweak you're going to make to your bio is you don't want to go for subjective credibility, you want to go for objective credibility. So if you say things like, oh, I've served, I'm really experienced, or I've worked with a lot of people, and things like that, well, how many is a lot? Is a lot 2 or is it 20? Is experienced that you have a PhD and a master's degree and you've worked in the industry for 20 years, or is it 3? So if you have 10 clients or you have the audiences you've spoken to have 100 people in them, right? So it's not a lot of people, it's 100. Use objective measures of credibility, not subjective. The thing to think in mind here, what I think about is, could somebody who is delusionally confident, who is like crazy confident, who had 0 experience, say the same thing? Could they say they're experienced? Of course they could, because that word doesn't mean anything. So I would take words like experienced, lots, passionate, all these things, I would just remove them and replace them with more objective measures of credibility. The second tweak to make to your credibility or your bio to make it better is think of credibility as relative, not absolute. So if you have a bunch of things that you've done that have happened to you, or things you're really good at, when you're considering doing a TEDx talk at least, or I think this applies for any audience, don't just think of your credibility, think of your credibility in relation to the audience. You could say, well, I'm really successful, right? But if the audience is really successful too, then your relative credibility is basically 0. Whereas there could be some things where you're very good at it, and relative to a typical audience you would talk to, or relative to your colleagues, maybe you're in some like niche industry, you're an engineer, you're an accountant, or whatever, you have deep knowledge in finance. Well, relative to the audience, maybe you're not the top of the finance chain, or you're not the best engineer or scientist in the world, but relative to a TEDx audience, you actually have a lot more relative credibility than them. So think in terms of, what does a TEDx audience typically know? What are they good at? And then what have you done that is more relatively credible than them? Third mistake that people make, and the third tweak that you can make to your bio to make it sound more appealing, is swapping out signals of passion with signals of expertise. So if you say, well, I've been in this industry for 20 years, well, that's a signal of effort you've put in. Doesn't mean you're actually good at it. And that sounds harsh, I know, but things like having a book, well, you can be really bad at what you do and still have a book, but a book is a very strong signal of passion. It is not really a signal of expertise. So if you have things, like you have amazing results that you created for clients, that does take a lot of expertise, and you should try to highlight those as much as possible. And you can include signals of passion if you want. Especially these are good if you don't have many signals of expertise at all. But as much as possible, try to emphasize signals of expertise as well. Because if you say things like, oh, I'm really passionate about this, I've been working in this field for 20 years, and I have this book, a lot of people, without really realizing why, will doubt whether or not you know what you're talking about. Whereas if you say, well, I was featured in Harvard Business Review, and here's a bunch of testimonials from my clients, they're getting amazing results, and I won this award, all of a sudden it sounds more convincing, but it's hard to articulate why. It's because some things are a signal of passion, some things are a signal of expertise. You want to focus on signals of expertise. The next credibility bio mistake, and then the next improvement you can make, is you want to make it as easy as possible, not hard, but easy as possible for somebody reading your bio to figure out the best stuff. So if you say, oh, I have a book and the title is this, include the link to Amazon for the book so people can see that, oh, this is a real book, there's a cover and whatever else. You don't want to have them go and have to kind of like type it in or whatever. The more they have to try to research you and discover this, the less likely it is they're going to book you. This also goes for the length of your bio and what kinds of things you include. If there's more interesting things and less interesting things, you're probably better off just eliminating the less interesting things so that people can actually find out what the more interesting things are. You don't want to say, oh yeah, check out my website, check out my LinkedIn, you'll find all the information you need there. You want to tell them as much as possible in the actual application form. Don't assume they're going to go research your website and figure it out. Don't assume they're going to go call people and ask about you. They're not going to do that. That's extra work for them, and it just makes it less likely they will discover the things about you that are really amazing and really compelling. The next credibility kind of bio hack that you can do is you want to emphasize the most interesting thing. So you could say something, so like an okay thing to say is, oh, I've helped 20 clients, right? But what's the most interesting thing about those 20 clients? Maybe you've helped them get results in very like almost no time, right? So I've helped people become millionaires in like a month, right? That's the most interesting thing, is the speed of results and the scale of results. Maybe it's you're a mental health person, or you're a health and fitness coach or something like that, and you worked with Fortune 500 C-suite executives. Well, that's the most interesting thing there. Maybe you've worked with a famous person, or a famous person has endorsed your work, or for me, for example, a number of my clients have gone to Yale and Harvard, and one was an Olympian. And so the most interesting thing about my clients, I mean, sure, I have them, they've gotten results and been booked at a TEDx event, but I also want people that are thinking of hiring me as a coach to know that people that are very high level people that go to Harvard and Yale, and like I list all the schools, right? I think so. There's Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Oxford, Cambridge, and an Olympian. So I want people to know that very high level people have trusted me. That's really important. So if you have things that are amazing things, maybe you shared a stage with a famous thought leader, a celebrity everybody knows. Maybe you've spoken to a huge number of people. Oh, I spoke at an event and there was 1,000 people that were listening. Or I spoke at this event and Tony Robbins was on the same stage. Or my client was a A-list celebrity, right? Maybe you can't mention the name, but you can kind of say that kind of stuff. So think about what the most interesting thing is about your credibility and highlight that most interesting element. And the last big thing you want to make sure you do, and like a mistake you want to avoid, is if you have credibility at different like layers of magnitude or orders of magnitude, eliminate the bottom layer. So I have a client right now who she's been featured on Oprah Magazine, Bloomberg, the Wall Street Journal. She's spoken at the United Nations, and then she also has a bunch of other media outlets she's been featured in that no one's ever heard of. We want to make sure that people actually see that she's been featured in Oprah Magazine, because not a lot of people have, and Bloomberg and the United Nations and things like that. So what you want to do is, if you have a lot of really high credibility things, eliminate the things that are an order of magnitude lower. If they're all kind of like upper echelon stuff, cool, you can include it all. I think that's fair to do. But you don't want people to be distracted with the lower level stuff. You want to really make sure they see the best thing you've got. So one way to think about that is orders of magnitude. Are there things that are like a tier or two above the lower level, and you can make your bio more focused by thinking about only the upper order of magnitude, upper echelon of stuff. So that is all for the major things you want to do with your bio, major mistakes you want to avoid, major tweaks you can make. Leave your bio down below. I'd love to hear what you have, like what do you normally say in your website? What's your bio like? I'll provide some feedback from you, how you can make it better. I think this applies to TEDx events as well as other opportunities. So if you want to do more speaking, you have an expert, you want to do more podcast interviews, things like that, leave your bio down below. I'll comment below with some tweaks that you can make to your bio or questions you can ask to make it even more compelling. So that is all for today. If you want more info on doing a TEDx talk, getting more exposure, if you're a coach, you're an expert, you're an author, you're a professional, you want to get more eyeballs on your stuff, more attention, and leave an impact on the world, subscribe, like this video. There's more stuff coming. So that is all for today.